Michael didn't notice it all at once. There was no moment where he thought, I'm shrinking. No clear decision to step back from himself. It happened quietly, in the way he softened his voice even when something mattered, in the way he hesitated before speaking a truth that didn't feel sharp, just real, in the way he began to take up less internal space, as if restraint were the same thing as wisdom. At first, he told himself this was growth. After all, he was calmer now, less reactive, more measured. He had learned how to slow down, how to choose fewer inputs, how to carry care without collapse. But beneath the gentleness, something felt off. There was a subtle contraction, not fear exactly, but a quiet withdrawal. Michael realized that somewhere along the way he had started to associate softness with disappearing, as if staying open required staying small. He noticed it most in moments of tension, not conflict, just contrast. When someone spoke forcefully, he chose silence, not because he was listening, but because he didn't want to disrupt the calm. When he felt something true rise in him and gently pushed it back down, telling himself it wasn't necessary. When he confused peacekeeping with presence. None of this felt dramatic, and that's what made it hard to see. Michael had always believed that shrinking was what happened when people were afraid, but this wasn't fear. This was adaptation, a quiet strategy his nervous system had adopted to stay safe in a loud world. If I'm gentle enough, nothing will escalate. If I stay small enough, nothing will ask too much. If I stay soft enough, I won't overwhelm anyone or myself. The realization landed slowly, but clearly. This wasn't humility, it was self-erasure disguised as kindness. And that stopped him, because Michael hadn't done all this work just to vanish more politely. He hadn't learned how to regulate, anchor, pace, and discern so that he could quietly exit his own life. So he asked himself a question he had never considered before. What if gentleness doesn't require retreat? What if softness could be upright? What if calm could have a spine? That question didn't make him harder, it made him curious. Michael began to notice the difference between softness that came from presence and softness that came from avoidance. One expanded him, the other diminished him. So he started experimenting carefully and honestly. He spoke when something mattered without force. He stayed in conversations that felt uncomfortable without bracing. He let his voice carry, not louder, just clearer. What surprised him was how his body responded. There was no spike of anxiety, no tightening in his chest. Instead, there was a sense of alignment, as if something that had been folded inward was finally allowed to stand. Michael realized that shrinking had been a way of staying safe, but safety that costs you your presence is too expensive. He didn't need armor, he didn't need sharp edges, he didn't need to harden. He needed to trust that his presence, gentle, grounded, steady, was not a threat, not to others, and not to himself. He noticed how different this felt in the world. People didn't push back more, moments didn't escalate. In fact, many things softened, not because he was accommodating, but because he was clear. Michael understood now that gentleness isn't about reducing yourself. It's about being fully here without force. It's about letting your care show up as steadiness, not disappearance. There was strength in that, not the loud kind, not the performative kind, the kind that comes from being aligned inside. The overwhelm didn't vanish, but it no longer folded him inward. He stopped bracing, he stopped retreating, he stopped mistaking self-silencing for peace. If you're listening and recognizing this is the way you soften by shrinking, pause here for a moment. Notice where you might be holding yourself back, not because it's true, but because it feels safer. You are allowed to be gentle and still take up space. You are allowed to be kind and still remain present. You are allowed to stay soft without becoming small. Gentleness does not require surrendering your place in the world. It requires trusting it. And that trust, quiet, grounded, embodied, is strength. We're almost there now. One final integration remains.